Have you ever wished you could eavesdrop on a conversation with a millionaire? My name is Michelle Thompson. I'm a retired project controls engineer and business professor, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this podcast. I get to ask the questions that everyone else wishes they could. I'm going to find out exactly how they were able to build their empires through automation and outsourcing. And I'm going to break it down in a way that helps you build your business to run on autopilot. Don't miss out on Automate to Dominate.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. In How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a six-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Automate to Dominate. Today, I am so excited to have author Rachel Richards with us, and she is going to talk about her second book, Passive Income Aggressive Retirement. Her first book was actually Money Baby, and so Rachel, thank you so much for joining us on your birthday. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. It was actually a couple days ago, but we've been celebrating all weekend. So
you have to have a birthday week. That's how it goes.
Absolutely. It's a whole week.
Exactly. So I'm going to try and pick your brain about as much as possible about passive income aggressive retirement. So those of you guys looking, this is Rachel's new book, and I was so excited because this is literally what this podcast is all about trying to make multiple streams of passive income. And we use automation and outsourcing, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand. But so you were 27 when you retired, is that right?
Yes, and I just turned 28.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't realize it was like only a year ago. Cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was last year, it was August, and that is when I quit my job and retired.
Good for you. And so before that, what were you doing?
I was a senior finance analyst at a global manufacturing corporation. I was doing that for a few years. It took me kind of a while to find my career path because, the first few years after college, I graduated in 2013, and I felt like I was job hopping a little bit, didn't know what I was doing. So landing this corporate finance job was a real win for me, and walking away from that was actually really difficult. I had a great team. I was paid well. I was challenged. So it actually was hard to give up, but I wouldn't go back. I love the freedom that I have now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know there was just reading from your books, there was a time you were a financial advisor in there too. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That was actually my first job out of college. I had a sales background.
That's a tough gig right out of college.
Yes, and I was like 20 when I graduated, so just picture like a 20-year-old girl trying to tell all these old people how to invest their life savings. I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about it, but I didn't realize it was such a salesy job. That's just because I was naive. You really have to cold call and build that book of business for years and years before you get to spend most of your time actually helping people. And I was just too impatient to do that. I just want to help people with their money. So that's why I think I was in that job for about a year, and then I decided that it wasn't for me.
Yeah, actually, we have a kind of similar story. So I think I was 23 when I decided to become a financial advisor, and same thing. I was like, I'm going to help all these people. It's going to be awesome. And I had like no clue that it was, However, I learned so much in that job that I was able to transfer into others. So it was a hugely awesome skill set.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. It's so funny how, in retrospect, all of the dots connect. Like, if I didn't have that job, I wouldn't have been able to put on my first book, oh, I'm a former financial advisor. That gave me the level of credibility I needed to start my business. So it all worked out really well.
yeah, and I mean, just everything that you know about stocks and bonds and REITs, and everything from did you have your seven, your six? Which one did you?
Series 7 and 66.
Okay, yeah. So that laid the foundation for you to be able to build the portfolio part, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
which
Yep.
is amazing. So before we dive into passive income, aggressive retirement, tell us just a little bit about the first book, Money Honey.
Yeah, so I published and launched Money Honey in 2017. And at the time, this was after I was a financial advisor, but I had always been this go-to person throughout high school and college that all of my family and friends came to for financial advice. And I started wondering, well, why aren't they reading or learning on their own like I did, or whatever, self-educating? And then I remembered, oh yeah, personal finance is super boring and awful and intimidating and complex. So I thought to myself, well, how can I make this topic fun and sassy and just humorous and simple? And that's where the idea of Money Honey came from. So I wrote it, very, very low expectations. I self-published, and it has been more successful than I ever could have imagined. I think it's sold close to like 15,000 copies now, and I have over 500 five-star reviews on Amazon.
Wow, that is amazing. And for everybody listening, Rachel did that with no advertising budget. That
Yes, that's
was
right.
total organic, which is absolutely amazing and awesome. And we're going to talk about that, the marketing part, because I want to pick your brain. But okay, if I may, I'm going to give a 10,000-foot overview of our book here because I just finished reading it.
Oh, thank you.
And then I would love to dive in and kind of pick your brain about some of the things in here.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go through here. So we have, is it 8 major ways to?
I think 5, but now I can't remember either.
5?
But there's
geez.
so yeah. In
Oh,
the book,
okay. I think I counted coin operators as 2, so that's how.
Oh yeah. So there's 28 different passive income models in the book that I outline and teach how to start, basically. But then I categorize them into sort of 5 big sections, 5 big categories.
Yeah, and so I think one of the coolest things about this book is you take things that people look at every day and then put dollar signs on them in a fun, sassy way.
Yeah.
Right? Which is awesome, right? Because I was thinking, I was reading through about the part, about a car wash, right? And you're like, well, it takes a huge amount of capital to start, but if you could make $10,000 a month just off of that one thing, and then you're like, oh, right, all of a sudden, dirty cars mean more.
Yeah.
Right. So I do have a question. So one of the ways that you have in here is online courses,
Mm-hmm.
one of your passive income strategies. And you said on here that you were going to build a real estate one. Have you built that yet?
Not yet, but I actually did just launch my first online course about money management. So it is designed to go along with my first book, Money Honey. It's called Get Your Financial Shit Together. So it's fun and sassy for all my female millennials. Yeah. And so that's what I just launched. I'm in the middle of it right now. I'm taking my beta members through it. But I do hope to start launching by the end of the year other different courses about passive income, and real estate investing is one of them. So it's in the works.
So if I may be totally off on this, but I think your favorite one is real estate. Is that correct?
Yeah, I always think of it as the holy grail. I mean, there's just so much more to it than just the passive cash flow. There's other benefits. And I think it's one of the ways that so many just average people can become extremely wealthy.
And so you did something really, really cool. I love the 10 model, right? With the mortgages and things like that. Explain to everybody just a little bit about what that's about. And because I mean, it's intimidating. People are like, oh my gosh, if I buy the wrong property, I'm going to go bankrupt, and who wants tenants and blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah, so there's an example in the book that takes you through, like, here's how you can retire from real estate investing as an example. And here's how it makes more sense to do this than to work 40 years and save a bunch of money and try to save this nest egg so that you can retire at age 65. So I basically have this table that outlines here's how you can, like, retire from real estate investing in the next 10 years, basically. And basically, the whole idea is to buy a single family house every year for 10 years, all on 15-year mortgages. So by year 10, you're done acquiring, you're making decent cash flow. But then by year 15, when you start paying off those mortgages, you're really, really making the big bucks. So that's just an example. It was actually my first goal when I was starting to think about early retirement. I was just going to do it that way. But then once I started investing in real estate, things just happened a lot more quickly, and it only took me a few years to do. So it was pretty magical.
Yeah, so you ended up buying a duplex, right, instead of a single family home, and that kind of really compounded things. How did that happen?
So in 2017, my husband and I invested in our first rental property, which was, as you said, a duplex. And we were open to buying multifamily, single family. It was just kind of whatever the numbers would work. And that deal we found on the MLS. By this point, we both had lots of money saved up because neither of us graduated from college with debt. We both paid our way through school, and we were pretty frugal with our money. So we both said, well, let's put $10,000 in for 20 grand, and this duplex was 100 grand. And now keep in mind, this is in Louisville, Kentucky. Prices were super, super low. Okay, it's a really low cost of living area. So we had a $20,000 down payment. We bought that house. We immediately started cash flowing about $500 per month. That was in pure profit. And then I saw the dollar signs and I started to get really excited because up until then it was sort of abstract. It was more of a dream. But once we got that first property under our belts, I was like, wow, I see how this can work. And actually, I see how we can achieve our goals a lot sooner than 10 years. So that motivated us. We saved even more aggressively. We reinvested, and we just kept acquiring properties throughout the next couple years.
So, yep, I had a question, and just like that, it's gone. Because I had another thought. Sorry, I don't know if I told you this before, but I had a stroke a couple of years ago, and so
yeah.
One of the things is I'll lose my train of thought. So you just have to go with me. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine.
So I just after reading the book, I left a review, and the way that I described it was it's kind of the rich dad poor dad for this millennium. And I say that because he kind of Robert Kiyosaki kind of just pivots the way that you think about things. And I feel like you did the exact same thing in this book. And he gave a lot of like really cool little stories, that just kind of like just went, oh, and you do the exact same thing. Like, for instance, when you're talking about Etsy, right? And downloadables, guys, I'm going to jump all over the place today because today's a rough day. So if I forget, it's in the book. I swear it's in the book. Okay. So inside one of the sections is printables, correct?
Mm-hmm.
One of
print on demand. There's print on demand, and there's also like digital downloads.
Okay, so explain that to us, please.
Yeah, for sure. So print on demand, it's one of my favorite passive income streams. I feel like I say that about all of them, though. They're all so great. But it is one that I've personally done. I haven't done all 28 in the book, but I did so much research and I interviewed subject matter experts for all the rest. But the print on demand is basically where you put a design on a product. Because most of the time when you're selling physical products, you have to have a store or you have to have inventory, and that's a lot of risk because what if you buy a ton of inventory thinking it's going to sell and it doesn't? That's a financial risk, inventory risk. That could be really bad. But with print on demand, it's brilliant because you literally put designs on products and you never touch them and they're made to order. So for example, you can go on one of these sites, Redbubble, Teespring, Merch, and put all these designs on things like tote bags and mugs and sweatpants. And once a customer orders that item, then it gets made. So it gets made after the fact, and then you just get paid a royalty. So we have this, and we do mostly clothing items, and it can be very passive. I mean, obviously, we could grow it into a larger revenue stream by putting in more time, but it's been sustaining itself, making a couple $100. I mean, it's not anything like life-changing, but we literally haven't touched it in a year. So it truly has been passive for us, and it's one of those that I also think anybody can get started doing immediately.
And I think that was, you just hit it. That was the pivot point for me. Was that, when you first look at it and you're like, 300 bucks. Okay, big deal. Right. And you're like, why do I want to put all my time into this? But the cool part is like, it's very, very little startup. It just takes a lot of time, not necessarily
Yes.
money. And if you can start stacking, $300 here, $150 here, $400 here, all of a sudden it starts to make a big difference. And the time that you put in, it's not like it was a huge financial investment, right? It was a
Right.
time investment.
Right.
And now it's going to continue to keep doing its thing forever.
Yes, and I'm so glad you put it that way, because passive income is all about stopping to trade your time for your money. And it's all about making money without putting in a ton of time. And that's the beauty of it. So yeah, 300 bucks doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're having to do hardly any work to keep making that, or maybe no work to keep making that, then that's like a money tree. So I always talk about passive income in terms of two stages, because you can't just snap your fingers and create passive income. It does take time or money to create, as you said. And print on demand is one of those that it requires more time than it does money, which is why I think it's more accessible for people. But in terms of the two stages, there's stage one, which is where you're putting in the time, or you're putting in the money, you're getting this passive income stream built and created and launched. And then in phase two is when you have the momentum going and you can kind of sit back and be a little bit more hands off. That's when it really becomes passive. And that's when the magic happens.
Yeah. And in the book, you talk, one of the examples is blogging, right? And that's something that is super slow, super time consuming, but lasts forever, right? Because somebody will stumble across an article that you wrote 3 years ago, and maybe they stumble across your affiliate link, and now, you receive income for something you did 3 years ago, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought up that example, because if somebody just would say that, blogging is passive, all the bloggers would be like, it's not passive, you have to constantly create and write content. And so I always make the point in the book, like, you have to make sure you are building this in a way that it can become passive. So I talk about two case studies for blogging, particularly Bobby Hoyt, and then a lawyer in India that had started a blog. And, they both put in a ton of time up front, and now they're really being able to be more hands off about it. So Bobby, as an example, makes like tens of thousands of dollars a month from his website and his blog, but he doesn't even do the work anymore because he's found a way to outsource everything. So that's the key, is like, how can I delegate things or build this business in a way that, if you do have to continue creating content, how can that be outsourced? Because you don't want to quit your job just to then be full-time doing something else and have your hands tied. Or maybe you do if it's your passion. I mean, I'm pretty full-time with my business now, but the point of passive income is to free up your time. So just knowing ahead of time that you're going to build things towards that way, outsource, that is really the goal. That's what you're after.
Yeah, and that's awesome, because oh geez.
You're good. Take your time. I love using Bobby Hoyt as an example because he does so many different passive income streams. Oh, what do you remember?
Yes, that's where I was going with Bobby Hoyt, and the multiple income streams. And it's funny how they start to stack on each other. Once you have one asset, you can kind of turn it into a different asset and then another asset, and they can all become like money making machines, right? So if you take his example, the majority of his income is probably from his online courses, right? Is that?
I think so. And then he has his blog and his online courses and his membership, I believe. And I think he makes a lot of money from his membership as well. And for anyone that doesn't know, Bobby Hoyt is the millennial money man. So I featured him in my book. He has an awesome blog and online courses and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing how somebody, starts with one thing and you can expand it into all these different things so that you have multiple passive income sources.
Yeah, and I'm in the process of doing the same thing. I just have to get the marketing part down. We're working on that. But so I started by building an online course because one of the problems with the stroke is I can't write anymore. So I used to write all my blog posts. And then I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. So I ended up actually hiring a full-time VA just to do blog blog posts. So now there's 4 articles that come out every week with a targeted keyword that I don't write. And it's just churning and burning in the background. Well, then one of my buddies challenged me. He's like, well, why don't you write an ebook? I was like, I can't write. He's like, yeah, but you already have the videos done. And I was like, oh yeah. And so we had my writer take the videos and turn them all into ebooks. And
Oh,
so
that's
now,
brilliant.
yeah, so now we're coming out with 6 ebooks, and then we're going to take all 6 ebooks and combine it together and put it on Amazon for a print on demand book when they,
That's so perfect. And ebooks is like another example of passive royalty income. So that's so cool.
yeah. So it's super awesome because I was able to not take the conventional way. So it's still me because I recorded the video. I'm still teaching what's like in my brain. It's just I can't do a lot of it anymore, and yet still turn it into probably 4 different passive income streams, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's what I love about royalty income and selling content, I guess, is because people prefer it in different formats. Just because someone likes to read, maybe they would rather have an audiobook though. So you can have an ebook, a paperback, an audiobook, an online course, a podcast, a blog. I mean, there's so many different things you can do if you feel like, oh, here's something I can teach somebody else. And then bam, you have 7 income streams.
Yeah, and like you said, they all may start out little, right? But don't discourage it. Like I got super excited because it had, from my blog post, it had been like 2 years of writing, and I like pretty much saw nothing, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. And then all of a sudden, I just randomly got a check for $150, and I was like, okay, it's a start. And now it's consistently, starting to bring in some revenue. And it's
Yeah.
stuff that happened years ago, and people are just stumbling upon the articles that I did then. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the biggest mistakes people make when starting any business is not giving it enough time, giving up too early, especially with things like content creation and teaching people, offering that service. You have to be so consistent for so long to start generating traffic and to start generating income.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the small coin operated machines, because this was cool for me because, I was thinking about it and I was like, yeah, okay, a soda machine. And then you started breaking down the math, and it didn't hit me until you put the return on investment numbers in front of my face. Because I was like, $300. And then you're like 58% return on investment. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because it's something so small that can generate a significant income stream compared to the amount you put in. I mean, it would take several to generate meaningful revenue, but basically the idea with a vending machine is, you put a vending machine in an office location. You're going to pay the owner of that location a percent of the revenue. You have to go by once a week to restock and to collect the money, but that also can be outsourced if you trust somebody to do that. Otherwise, though, like one trip a week to me is pretty passive. Sometimes people are like, well, you still have to work to create this income. And yeah, there's no 100% passive income stream, maybe portfolio income. But to me, anything that's passive is, a few hours a month, a couple hours a week. I mean, compare that to a 40-hour a week job. And to me, it's very passive.
Yeah.
So I love the vending machine idea because you can buy, a pretty good used vending machine for a couple $1,000s, a few thousands of dollars. And if you get it in the right location and you get the right products in by, doing market research, asking the employees of that location, then you can be making several $100 per month. And for only, a $4,000 investment, that's an amazing ROI.
Yeah. And I think that was when the light bulb went off, was when you actually turned it into the ROI number. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah. Because I'm only going to get 8 to 10% on, my mutual fund on a good year. Right. So I was like, well, okay, maybe not a good year, but maybe an average year. But anyway,
Yeah.
so that was super awesome.
Yeah,
Talk to
some of
me.
the ROI, oh, sorry, some of the ROI on these passive income streams is so much higher. For me, a lot of the point of this is like, I want to make a higher ROI than I could in the stock market. And I want to have diversified income streams. You have to have so much money in the stock market to generate meaningful revenue. And yes, that is passive income. But for a lot of people, like we don't just have $2 million set aside to invest and live off of that. So, as another example of ROI, my first book, Money Honey, cost less than $600 to launch. And I think in February from both of my books combined, I made over $7,000. And that's
Nice.
just in 1 month. So, I mean, the ROI on that, I don't even think I could calculate that.
Right, right.
but,
Or if
but
you
yeah, I
did,
mean,
nobody would believe you. They're like, yeah,
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So to, just be aware that you can do this with little money. You have to be willing to put in the time and you have to be persistent, but it can really turn into a big money maker over time.
I think you talk about MJ DeMarco in your book. And I think that was another book that like total light bulb book, right?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So what are the things that you learned from MJ that you implemented into your passive income streams?
I think MJ's book, it's called The Millionaire Fastlane. It might be my top favorite nonfiction book. I just am such a fan of his. I think it's just really helped me change my mindset from consumer to producer and start looking at the world differently. And, anytime I'm using a product or buying something, it's like, wow, is there something I could do to improve upon this product or make this better? Or if I have a complaint about something, like I think one of the examples I put in the book was, how you wash your face at night and it just, all the water rolls down your arms. I mean, it drives me insane. And I was like, somebody needs to make an armband or something to fix that. Like there has to be a solution. So if somebody made that product, I would buy it. I think once you can start looking at the world that way, you find it very easy to make money. Like I'm constantly coming up with ideas. I don't have time and I don't care to implement them, but there's so many ways you can look at the world and fill a market need, fix a problem for somebody and make money from it.
Yeah. And I think that's the magic, right? Is when we figure out how do we serve, and really become of value to somebody else, and then the money just magically follows.
Yes, and that's such a good point, Michelle, because I would never advise somebody to just do what they think the market wants. Or, like for me, I love chocolate, okay? I could have written a whole book about chocolate and how much I love it, but who cares? Like, how would that book help somebody? So I had to find a way to combine my passion with something that was really needed in the market. For example, with Money Honey, there just aren't any fun, humorous finance books out there. To me, it felt like there was nothing accessible for a female millennial. So I wrote that book for any female millennial out there. And that's what you have to do. Be thinking of, why would somebody want to buy my product or service over the thousands of others that are already out there? What am I going to do differently? What is my unique value proposition and what problem am I solving?
Yeah, and that's such a huge golden nugget right there. Actually, I was talking to Dave Chesson the other day, and
I love Dave.
I know he's amazing. And that's what he basically said. He went on and that's how he found his first big moneymaker. He was frustrated because he was trying to buy a book on Evernote for authors, and there really wasn't one. There were a bunch of generic books, right, on Evernote. And so he went through and he started doing some keyword research and found that, I think he found like 3 specific niches inside of Evernote, right? And they just sold like hotcakes because it was so niche that it was for that specific person. Almost like, honestly, I had no idea who you were. I had never heard of you. I went to Amazon and I typed in passive income. And the reason that, really good title, by the way.
One of my readers thought of it, so I can't even take credit.
Oh, see, there you go. She gets a royalty.
Yeah.
But I was sitting here with the podcast and I was like, man, who are some really awesome authors and people who have done this that I can get on the show? And so I went to Amazon and I typed in passive income to see, what would pop up. And yours was one of the ones that popped up. And I was like, I need to read that book. And so then I sent you an email and I was like, we'll just give it a shot. And you're like, yeah, sure. I was like, so wait.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So it was, but sorry, back to the Dave Chesson point. If you can the reason that Money Honey took off was because it wasn't just another generic financial book out there. You found a way to, put the sassy into it and make it for, the female millennial. I mean, it could be, but mostly female millennials, right?
Yeah.
And so, everybody loves that. And one of the reasons I love reading your book is it's not boring, right?
Good, because
so,
I was hoping to be the opposite of boring.
Right? You did it. You did it well.
Yay!
And I suppose that's probably one of the reasons why, Dave Ramsey did well too, right? Because he took complicated things and then just made fun of them.
Yeah, that's so true. But I love what you said about Dave Chesson. That was such a great example, because I think people feel like they need to create a product for everybody. They want to have the most people possible be attracted to their product. But actually, I think that hurts people. I think the more specific and targeted you get, the more your book is going to resonate. And I think Dave Chesson is a great example of doing that exactly right.
Yeah. And if you can, I guess, I do not remember who said this, but the quote is, if you try to be everything for everyone, you end up being nothing to no one.
Yeah.
And man, if
perfect.
Somebody knows, if somebody's listening to this, tell me who wrote that, because I say it all the time. But it's, it's so true. If you don't get super targeted and really try to dive in and help that one person, then you become nothing to no one. You become a loud voice. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, it is 3:05 and I want to be super respectful of your time.
Oh, you're good. I have more time, so it's up to you.
Okay, awesome. May I ask 2 more questions, and I promise I'll let you go?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So when you started diving into marketing, how did you finally pivot and the light bulb came off and you're like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do to let the world know this is how I can help them?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Marketing is so challenging, I think, because I think people feel awkward promoting themselves. And I just try not, this is going to sound weird, but I try not to promote myself because people don't want to see that and they get sick of it. So instead, I just try to add value. And if they're getting value from me for free, they're going to be willing to pay more money to get even higher levels of value. So that's how I've always approached it. And I think it's great to do that in any relationship you're building, a relationship with a potential customer or a new networking contact or a business partnership, anything. Seek to give value first before you ask for anything in return. So that's what I do. But in terms of launching my book, specifically Money Honey, because that's where most of the marketing efforts have been needed for myself. And I was not a marketing major. I know nothing about marketing. I mean, I've learned now, but I started out just being like, well, how does somebody successfully market and launch a book? One of the resources, which is sitting on your desk there, I see, is the book published by Chandler Bolt. I talk about Chandler Bolt everywhere because I credit him for being the reason I wrote Money Honey. I think I read somewhere recently that something like 82 or 84% of Americans want to publish a book. Like, it's a really common dream and goal for a lot of people. And I always felt I had that desire, but I didn't know how to make it a reality. And once I read that book published by Chandler Bolt, I finally had the outline that I needed, and I finally knew exactly what I needed to do. I mean, he gave me like 99% of what I needed to know: how to come up with a good book idea, how to outline, market, launch, everything. So once I read, I started putting pen to paper, and I literally just followed exactly what he teaches in his book. Part of it is coming up with a launch team, which is a group of people that are really committed to helping you. They're going to buy your book, they're going to review your book, they're going to share it on their social media. That's the most important part, because you have to have a lot of momentum in the beginning so that you can maintain that momentum long term. Now, the thing is, I didn't actually have a formal launch team for Money Honey. I didn't have some group or, special application like some people do. But I was actually really engaged in a couple different Facebook groups. And they weren't even necessarily about money. Actually, one of the Facebook groups I was in was about politics, but it was almost all female millennials. And every now and then somebody would have some random finance question, and I would jump in and I would say, hey, former financial advisor here, here's what I think. And I would take the time to write out a really detailed, helpful response. And people really appreciated that. And after doing that enough times, people in that group, if somebody asked a question, people would tag me and they'd be like, oh, you need to ask Rachel Richards. Or they'd be like, oh yeah, Rachel's your girl, she'll help you. And so I kind of became known over time as being this finance guru or this finance expert for this group. So it was great. And then once I had the book idea, I went in there and I was like, hey guys, I'm thinking about this. Like, what do you guys think? And there was such an overwhelming response. People were like, oh my gosh, yes, you have to write this book. Like, you make money management so easy to understand. Like, I want to read this book. Please write it. So that obviously was very encouraging to hear. But I kept that group engaged and involved. They helped me pick my cover. They helped me pick my title. So by the time I launched, I had hundreds of people that were emotionally invested in the success of my book and wanted to see it do well. So looking back on it, it was almost like I had an informal launch group within that Facebook group that, that wasn't even mine. And it really helps my book have a great start.
That's awesome. So last question, you say in the book, it took you a while to find your first property because you were looking for, that specific thing, and you didn't just run out and buy the first thing that you saw. What were those parameters? What were you looking for?
Yes. So real estate investing is something I always say, patience is key. You have to have patience. Do not settle for something less than what you want, because when you settle for a property that's not quite what you want, but it's almost there, that's when people lose money, or they get a much lower ROI than they thought, or they regret their decision, and that's not what you want to do. So I think my husband and I searched for our first property for about 9 months, and it wasn't just looking online, it was actively going to houses, apartment buildings. It was putting offers in and getting rejected. It was even having contracts fall through, inspections go bad, and then having to back out. So, it was a lot of effort in those 9 months. It would have been very easy for us to get discouraged, and we probably were at some point, but we just kept going. We stayed persistent, and we found that duplex. And I knew right away, because by then I had run numbers on so many properties. So when I saw that deal, I was like, we have to put an offer in, and we have to do it right away. And it ended up being one of the best deals we ever did. So the patience, was the best thing for us. I remember that one house before that we put an offer in and the contract fell through. I'm so glad the contract fell through, because if we had bought that, we wouldn't have had enough money to buy this other duplex that ended up being so great. And the other duplex that we bought was such a better deal than the original. So it really worked out. Some of the parameters that we think about when we're looking for a rental property, there's really 2 minimum requirements that I have. So first is the amount of cash flow. I always wanted to make at least $200 or $300 per unit. So if it's a single family, $200 or $300. And then once you get into multifamilies, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe like $400 for a duplex, something like that. So I had these cash flow numbers in mind. It was based on kind of my own math and where I wanted to be in terms of cash flow after 10 properties. So those requirements can be different for anybody. The second requirement I had was the cash on cash return on investment. So cash on cash ROI. And I figured, okay, well, I can make 8 to 10% in the stock market over time. So if I'm going to make 8 or 10% from this rental property, like, why would I want to do that? Because it's more work, it's more time. I would just stick my money in the stock market. So my requirement was, okay, I want to make at least a 12% cash on cash ROI, and anything more than that would be a bonus. So that's how I went into every deal. Now, other people look at other things like capitalization rate and all these other like fancy metrics and terms, but I just wanted to keep things simple for myself. So I looked at those 2 things. And with that first duplex we bought, we were killing it because we were making over $500 per month in cash flow right away. And the ROI was something like 20% or something like that. So,
nice.
Yeah, so it's worked out very well for us.
So any tenant horror stories yet?
Oh, hundreds of them. Yes, I'm glad you asked, because, real estate investing isn't just this rosy thing. I mean, the biggest complaint I think landlords have is dealing with tenants and those tenant nightmares and getting calls at 2 a.m. like with emergencies. And that's no fun. And I always say, if you want your rental property investing to be passive, you need to build in from the beginning the cost of hiring a property manager. Because I don't think any of us want to quit our jobs to become full-time landlords. At least I didn't.
Right.
So, make sure you have somebody in place to help you. But yeah, let's see, there's so many stories I could choose. We've had tenants that we've discovered drug use in their room, and we've had to evict tenants, and we've had tenants like destroy places after they left because they were angry with us. One thing that happened, which actually isn't tenant related, but it's just a huge mistake I made when I was investing, so it's kind of a funny story, is we invested in this big duplex. It wasn't the other one I was talking about, but a different one. And it was something that we were going to fully renovate, basically. So when we first bought it, it was vacant. We had all these appliances delivered, brand new appliances, probably $10,000 or $15,000 worth. We had contractors that were starting work. And this was like 2 days after closing. We were like getting ready to go with it. So I think one morning, maybe this was 3 days after closing or something like that, I get a call from my contractor, and he's like, "Hey, I have bad news." And I was like, "What happened?" And he said, "The house got broken into, and there's some damage, and there's some robbery." And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Are the appliances still there?" And he said, "Yeah, they're still there." And I was like, wow.
Oh.
Wow.
You got lucky.
God, so lucky. And in retrospect, I'm like, how dumb were we? Some of these mistakes are so silly, but real estate investing is just always a learning process. We're always learning and making things better. But hopefully someone out there listening can learn from my mistake, because the moral of the story is to protect your physical assets. Get your security system in place the day you close. Get your alarm system in place the day you close. Ironically, we had a security system that we were about to install, and the people that came and robbed us stole that too. So,
oh geez.
Yeah, so they stole the security system. I think it was just teenagers, and they took what they could carry. So they took the microwaves and the lockbox and the security system, just the little things. It was like $1,000 in damage, which was fine because we really could have been a lot worse off. So we made it out of that pretty good, all things
considered.
Considered,
yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. How can people find you online?
So you can find me, if anyone likes funny money memes, I post a lot of them. So if you just search Money Honey Rachel, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. But I'd love to offer your listeners, Michelle, my free passive income bonus gift. I talk about it in my book, but I'd love to just go ahead and offer that. So it's just a starter kit that tells you, hey, here's the type of passive income stream you should pursue first. Here are the deadly mistakes to avoid. And then there's a ton of free resources and tools. So if anyone wants to download that, you can go to moneyhoneyrachel.com/bonus.
And guys, the book is on Amazon, so definitely go pick up a copy. It is worth its weight in gold. I would have easily paid 3 times the amount for this book. Just amazing book. I can't say enough, guys. So Rachel, thank you for your time. I will let you get back to your birthday week, and really, really appreciate it. And everybody hit up Rachel on Facebook and just pound her with happy birthday memes. How do you, see, my friend Wendy's going to kill me. She's going to be like, I can't believe you butchered that again. Yeah, so.
I love it. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been so fun talking to you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Automate to Dominate podcast at www.awesomeoutsourcing.com/podcast. My name is Michelle Thompson. Hey guys, if you absolutely love this show, I would greatly appreciate it if you would head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star written review. That would be amazing. And as always, if you guys know somebody who should be listening to this podcast, please don't keep it all to yourself. Share it with your friends.